everyone for your welcome, and I'm astonished that so many people made it through the strikes. I had to resort to a car, and if it weren't for your very kind hospitality, you might not have made it either. Anyway, for my sins, I joined National Coastwatch just over 10 years ago. I hadn't heard of it, so I visited the boat show that was still being held in London. So it was a complete shock to me to find out that these chaps on the stand I was chatting to weren't actually Coast Guards. And I think a lot of people still think that we are part of that organisation, and we absolutely are not. Although we work absolutely hand in glove with them, and are very much we've been treated more recently as one of their assets, I think we're now viewed, now that we've become better established, we're the only people listed on their website as one of their partners. There are no other partners other than National Coastwatch. So what I'd like to do is let you know actually who we are, what we do, how we do it, and where we do it. And I hope that when I get to the end, if you have to excuse me, I may dodge about a little bit, but I'll try and fill in the bits as I go through. I hope you'll have a good idea individually of whether you might use the services of the organisation, or just be pleased perhaps that we're there keeping an eye on what's going on without anybody knowing about it, or perhaps even who we are. And last but not least, if you live near one of our stations, you might think of joining them, if not visiting. So first of all, where are we and where did we come from? I don't know if you remember, back in 1990 and up to about 1992, the government decided to dispense with all of the coastal lookout stations that were manned, thousands of redundancies. And the idea was that technology was so good that radar, radio, and the newly invented AIS system would give them complete control over the waters. To cut this long story short, you may have heard it before, in 1994, down at Bass Point, a fishing boat sank right in front of the old lookout that had been closed. And two of the former watchkeepers there, so do you need chairs?
It's very popular, isn't it, this one?
They were very upset that this incident happened, and when they got talking afterwards, they decided to campaign to reopen the station. And it was a very popular idea, and it didn't take them very long. 2 years later, 1994, Bass Point became the first of what was going to be National Coastwatch's stations. It was very primitively manned, and it wasn't long before half a dozen in the Cornwall area, about one reaching up to St Albans, and funny enough one at Canby Island, at Holehaven, popped up, largely following the spirit of what happened at Bass Point. The organisation has grown now, and we just broke through 2,700 volunteers. We have no employees, and we have 60 stations, all of which are funded by charitable donations, our own funds raised locally, and we never forget that every penny that we spend has been given by somebody. So what do we do, and how did we go into that position? Well, to begin with, we were a bit of a thorn in the Coast Guard's side. They treated us like a dad's army, because most of them were my sort of age, and stumbled about a little bit, and had quite a bit of experience of the sea. But in order to grow, we had to bring in people who had absolutely no idea about what's happening when they look out of a coastal lookout. So it's taken 25 years to get NCI in a position where it has a standardised operational manual, standardised training manual. We have to deal with things like the Data Protection Act, health and safety, all the legislation that any other organisation, voluntary or otherwise, has to follow. But what is our prime work, and where the Coast Guard is probably seen to fail, is that they don't have eyes on the water. We have eyes permanently on the water in daylight hours and ears listening as well. All of the electronic gadgetry the Coast Guard has can't see a flare, can't see a swimmer in distress, can't see a dog or a person falling off a cliff. We have eyes on the water. And again, to cut a long story short, we're no longer a nuisance. The Coast Guard, you often hear them chatting on Channel 0 if they're dealing with an incident. You hear them say, shall we see if we can get some eyes on the water? In the one big centre at Fareham, the main coordination centre, there is a screen, and every time one of our stations logs on in the morning or logs off, a light comes on a map, and they know exactly where one of our stations will have eyes on the water, and they will ask us to see if we can see something going on, or can we help with it. So I'd say we're entirely voluntary. Everything that we use and everything that we wear is paid for by us. We don't get any contribution, especially not even from the government. So, I think I've covered that. The little brochure that I've left each of you on the desk has an up-to-date map telling you where all of our stations are located at the moment. They've not grown in a straight line. They've grown in line with demand for help in certain areas, either by local councils or the Coast Guard themselves. So we probably have 40 potential sites that we're looking at the moment to grow into, 10 of which will probably open within the next 8 years or so. How we actually do that I'll speak about a little bit later. But we've grown up by either unmothballing old stations, old batteries, old cottages, anywhere that you can base a lookout. And our newest ones, which I think a lot of you may encounter, a lot of you got boats in the Solent, I know, is at Stone Point, which is actually a substation of the Calshot Tower, which is ours too. So just to give you an idea of the hodgepodge nature of the lookouts, here's a selection of a few of them. One of the early ones at Cape Cornwall, Fleetwood, Lancashire. There's Calshot. But anyway, all of our Coast Guard stations are open to the public. But if you go to that one, there isn't a lift, there isn't a staircase. There's a very good arrangement with the watchkeepers that they don't speak to any visitor for 5 minutes once they've actually got up there. Gosport's the only one you can't visit. This is actually within the Royal Naval establishment at Gosport, and you have to go through full military security just to go on watch there. It's right in the entrance as you come into Gosport. It'll be on your port side. Nels Point, South Wales. This is a lovely one. It's one of the few Welsh ones I've visited. It really is, it looks like a privy on a National Trust park. And it's amazing how it stood there, but it's a very important lookout. It stands between Fishguard and Milford Haven Harbour. Now we're monitoring shipping movements in our area, and you can see it's probably about 500 yards from the cliff edge. If you go there on a stormy day, the waves that strike the cliff deposit their foam on the lookout. It's quite an exciting place to be. Funny enough, the people of Fishguard and Milford Haven are they don't rush to be volunteers with us. The majority of volunteers come there from Swansea, and it takes them about an hour and a half to come. And because there are so few of them, they do roughly a 9.5 hour watch on their own before they're relieved. Very important little station, and any walker who goes past can't normally resist popping in and saying hello. There's always a welcome there.
But it's firmly anchored, isn't it?
It is. One at Lyme Regis was sort of similar in construction, and one of the storms a few years ago blew it straight off the top of the cliff. Fortunately, the roof went first, and we were able to retrieve the equipment, and it was pretty soon rebuilt. So, I think we should start with what we do and how we work with the Coast Guard. Why are they treating us as a partner? So, each station that we have is a partner effectively with the whole organisation and holds a status called Declared Facility Standards. The Declared Facility Standards means that we have at least one trained person or two trained persons, or one with a trainee at a station and capable of running a watch. And typically in the summer we have 3 4-hour watches in the station, and in the winter that comes down to 3-hour watches. So those people are trained, and they know that if there's a shout, there will be somebody there who can run the shout if necessary. So our standards are reviewed. Each station sort of shakes in their shoes when we know the DFS officer is coming to check the facility status. There'll be a review of the equipment, the rosters, all the manuals, and there'll be all sorts of interesting questions asked of the crew who are running the watch. And that's backed up by an MOU, a Memorandum of Understanding, between Coast Guard and NCI, and that governs things like our rights to use Channel Zero. And you start off by having to understand that we actually have no rights to use it. We do it with the permission of the Coast Guard, or if they specifically ask us to communicate, say, with a lifeboat. We are able, if a life is in jeopardy, to use Channel Zero, but it's best that we don't. Channel 16 is not quite so important, but if you think about it, there's enough going on Channel 16 during a search and rescue operation, let alone on Channel Zero. One other party who may or may not be directly involved on the instruction of the Coast Guard, if you have the likes of a member of the public or NCI interfering with that operation, then it can upset, it can put lives at risk, quite simply. So we have a very clear understanding about the terms under which we operate. And if a Memorandum of Understanding clause is breached, it's not just the station that might be prejudiced in terms of future operation, it's the whole of NCI. Declared facility standards are station particular, but the Memorandum of Understanding has to be clearly understood by anyone who works with us. Here is our Chief Executive, David Crozier, who's actually a watchkeeper with me at New Haven, with His Majesty's Coast Guard receiving a renewal of a declared facility status. So it's an important piece of paper, that. So that gives us covers the blanket under which we operate. I put this picture in here because we're going to talk now about what it takes to be a watchkeeper and what we do and how we do it. If you walk into our watch and you're a brand new trainee, and you go through the door, you're looking out over just over 400 square miles of sea. You've got Seaford Head away to the east there, and if you look west, you look down towards Brighton. So, if you come in for the first time, you wonder what you're going to do. 6 months later, you'd probably come in, and if you're taking over a watch, you'd want to know if there are any people on the beach at the foot of Seaford Head, you can see in the distance there. we'd want to know if there are any swimmers in the water that have been spotted, any dinghies, any movement, anything that's been put in our log. So on our list of things we look out for, there's just a few of them. We've got windsurfers, kite surfers, jet skis, inflatables, particularly ones that have been bought in garages that are of interest to us. Canoes, just tucked inside the pier head here. We have divers down, and they're regularly tombstoned by young kids. It's a great piece of water for divers to practice in, but they don't always get the practice that they're after. Fishermen, and the worst thing at the moment, the fashionable worst thing, is, of course, are paddle boards. They often come round the end of the pier. That ferry is outbound, and if you see somebody paddling round there, you just hold your head and hope the ferry has seen them. They inevitably do. We don't have to interfere. The port itself has the ferries over to Dieppe. We have dredgers there, charter boats, border force often pop in. And if you, as I say, you look to the west towards Brighton, we have a wind farm, and all the wind farm operations for E.ON are conducted through Newhaven. So we have a regular input of all the sea cats that come flying in and out. And there is another wind farm. I think it's certainly the biggest one in the Channel. It's going to be doubled in size over the next few years. So we're very busy with them. And you have incidents like this. The little patch of grass in the front there is a takeoff point for local paragliders who come down to Brighton and back. And they jump straight over the cliff. And we used to have to rely on what happened on the beach. If people came running to see what had happened, we know the glider probably hadn't actually got control of his chute. If nothing happens, you're probably going to see him pop up half a mile away, making his way down to Brighton. So there are three key elements to the way we work, which we form the basis of how we train. First of all, it's spot, plot and report. So first of all, spotting. It's a very simple thing we do. If you have a visitor station, you'll probably notice when you're talking to the watchkeeper, he's not looking at you or she. We've trained to have our conversations without taking our eyes off the water. We're listening on 5 radio stations in Newhaven. I'll come to them in a moment. The minute one of them cuts in, conversation stops. You clear the fact that you probably haven't got anything to do with what might be going on with that conversation, and you practically finish your sentence automatically. It's the way you behave when you're on watch. So you're constantly eyes on the water or on the cliffs, and whoever's on watch, you divide the watch, in our case east and west, and make sure that you're not guilty of what we call train spotting, getting captivated by something that's going on in front of you, not taking your eyes off it when you should be keeping an eye across the board. So how do we spot things? This is rapidly becoming the old-fashioned way. These large binoculars, although they've become cheaper now, are very much superseded by electronic telescopes. So we are able to use zooming telescopes up to about 35 times magnification, which probably cost half the price of these binoculars. And they're joystick controlled. We have remote sightings of them, so we can not only see what's happening the other side of the cliff by having a camera facing back. We can see what happens to a paraglider when they jump off. We can see what's happening the other side of harbour walls, the other side of obstructions. And we could, if we wanted, say, have one at Burning Gap or on Beachy Head, monitoring situations there without having to leave our lookout. That's one of the big differences between us and the operational side of Coast Guard. We, in principle, never leave our lookouts. The Coast Guards have about 300 teams around the countries who are, a large number are volunteers, but they get out and get wet feet and literally do the physical rescuing. We are the elderly group who hopefully help them from where we are. So this is typically what we'd be looking at, and we're able to zoom in. As I say, if you're sitting on that beach eating a sandwich, like I was telling someone earlier, if we zoomed in using the full power, we'd probably be able to tell you what's in the sandwich. We're not nosy parkers, we're looking at these things for safety reasons, and you can see how valuable it is if people are walking near the edge of a cliff. We can keep an eye on them, we can zoom in on them, and with the modern technology, more and more, we're able to patch in the Coast Guard's ecosystems. So we can share the data, we can share it with the harbour master as well if necessary in the case of New Haven. So technology is taking over. You can see the camera at the top of the barrier on the right, pointing back towards the lookout. That scans the whole of the cliff face below us. When we go home at night and lock the place up, this camera focuses on the building and lets us arrest any vandals who try to break in to steal things. Everything is recorded. So you've seen something, how do we plot it? Of course, it's simple that we've got chart tables. We've got some jolly good quick reference, quick plotting devices. For example, you see the 30, 60, 90 triangle. That slides along the bottom to give you your line of longitude, and the line of latitude is picked up on the scale on the straight edge going over. So you can very quickly do a plot. Particularly if I can give a rough plot, you can also give a range, a bearing on somebody who might be in trouble that you could convey to the Coast Guard. Similarly, we have ordnance survey maps for all the cliff within our region. So our main reporting is to the Coast Guard. And typically, if there is something going on that needs attention urgently, we will not call them on a radio. We will put in a 999 call. It's the quickest way of getting answered by the Coast Guard and the most effective way. We can always call up on their main station, but we're in a queue with any number of yachtsmen using channel 67, for example. Channel 0, as I say, not allowed to interfere with, but even better reasons. So, the sort of thing we don't do, we see lots of people going out improperly clothed, so stripped to the waist, wearing a swimming costume only, beer can in hand, no kill cord anywhere in sight, bombing straight out of the harbour and probably without permission to leave. We're not allowed to do anything about that. We're very much a free country. You can set sail in a bathtub, and even with the plug out, and nobody is going to stop you. We have very powerful boats that aren't properly managed, see some absolutely dreadful things, and we're not there to pick a fight with anybody. But if somebody does get into trouble, then we are there for them, even though they probably might not know it. I think we received calls from the public. I was telling someone earlier, we had somebody in Eastbourne reported a body in the water off the end of the pier. So we contacted the Coast Guard and they agreed to launch the small lifeboat out of Eastbourne. And the body was found, and it turned out to be a long-distance swimmer who was having a rest, and told the lifeboat, fortunately not us, in uncertain terms, that it didn't like to be interrupted. Anyway, the sort of things we have to do for the Coast Guard. If you think about it, could you, if you were standing in our lookout, tell a lifeboat skipper, coxswain, where to go once he's come out of the harbour entrance, if you can see the casualty? Do you know how you'd actually start to direct them? Would you try and give a bearing? Or how do you get a bearing? If you have to imagine that you're standing where they are, where do you tell them to go? You probably know that when a lifeboat is launched, it isn't until all the crew are on board and it's making its way out to sea that the Coast Guard will tell them what their task is. It might be to take an instruction from us. So how do we do that? This is just an interesting one. There's a little bit of kit that's present in every lookout that allows you to lay down on either the chart or just literally what you see in front of you, and you give instructions based on the quarters that they're to aim on, and you can of course home in based on that. So you should see one of those sticking up against the window in any lookout. Another bit of kit. So I gave a talk here about sailing in Holland, sailing over the North Sea. I said this is an egg timer is probably the most important piece of kit to have. You set it for 7 minutes, and every time it goes off, you stand up and do a 360 sweep around. And in that 10 minutes, there's enough time normally for a large vessel to practically close you or certainly appear over the horizon and let you take note that it's pointing towards you. We were talking about train spotting earlier. It's a sort of train spotting device. Similarly, I tried to set this system up in the lookouts. So if, for example, you have a solo swimmer, again, you're worried about them. When people swim in groups or go surfboarding in groups, they normally take care of each other. But the single swimmer wants watching, and we can focus a camera on them, set the timer 5 or 7 minutes. When it goes off, you've got a reminder to look. The sad side part of it is, I think the first time I put one in the New Haven lookout, was sitting on the side, and I think our fundraiser came in and thought it was a bit of bric-a-brac, and it was sold the following Saturday afternoon. So, skills. What do we teach anyone who wants to be a watchkeeper? They come from every walk of life. So I think we have a bishop, 2 other clergy members, fleet air arm pilot that I work with quite regularly, fishermen, policemen, people from absolutely all walks of life, nurses, and generally you have to work your way through a training syllabus, and it's divided into sections. All of your learning is done on the spot. You're in the lookout, you're looking out, and various, whether it's chart plotting, radio operations, law, the international regulations, are covered within your time in the lookout. There are about 100 different boxes that have to be ticked, and each exercise has to be done 3 times and signed off by a fellow watchkeeper. And when you feel you're ready to be fully assessed, it's your decision as to whether you go forward for assessment. What the period of training builds up to is giving the individual the confidence that they could run a shout on their own if they had to as a senior watchkeeper. That's what entitles you. You become assessed to see if that works. If it doesn't, you can have another shot at it. But it's most important that you feel competent enough to have the confidence to do the work, and we should provide sufficient experience. Everything is done on the job, you see it happening, so that you can make your own self-assessment. The key work that we do is probably more forensic. Any shipping movement within our area, or any notable event, and it might be a gang of people going into it for a swim, or some dinghies leaving the sailing club for a race. Time, of course, is the essence. Time is recorded. If you can get a name of a vessel, that will go in, number of people on board that you can see. AIS has one terrific asset in that you can replay it. So that if a vessel says, I wasn't there, and you say, yes, you were, the INS showed you were, in a coroner's court, you've got lines of evidence. Our evidence is often used to deal with prosecution of generally people who are in the area who shouldn't be there. So now really moving on to the more electronic side of things, recognition of distress and urgency. We have to be able to handle a mayday. So there are two ways you hear it normally. One is on the radio. If it's not a hand signal from someone in the water, I suppose that could count as a mayday. Or through the BSC announcement on the radio. If the call is not from a shore-based station, and a lot of them are, then the next thing you try to do is locate it. And normally that's by an announcement, and we just check that the Coast Guard, if it is anywhere in our region, that the Coast Guard is aware of it. If not, we will phone through to check that they've received the call. Am I right in thinking that just about everyone in here has at least heard a mayday? So, chart work. We train everybody. This is, fun enough, the thing that most people find most difficult. I find it the most enjoyable, but for chart work, it can be a little bit laboured. We do run additional classes outside the lookout to help people who have trouble with it. But it is actually much easier to train people when you're looking at the sea and you're relating it to a chart that's in front of you. I've always found it easier to train people in terms of dealing with what's physically in front of them. We have a peculiarity in New Haven in that the meridian line is half a mile to the west of us. So you have to be very careful, and we're facing south when you do a plot to mark it east or west. So we understand distress and urgency messages. In terms of visual bearings, the old-fashioned Polaris is very helpful for pointing a true bearing, and also the use of a chart plotter with a Polaris. And the modern chart plotter, which have touch-sensitive screens, if you know the water in front of you, you know roughly where a casualty is, you can just touch the approximate position in terms of notifying the Coast Guard on a chart plotter, and up comes the position near enough for you to relay it to the Coast Guard. So we have in our lookout, we listen on channel 16, channel 0. We listen on the Coast Guard channel 67, and also the port channel, which for New Haven is 12. Most people who come into New Haven, who are visitors, listen on 16, not on 12, so they miss the instructions of the harbour master generally who's trying to contact them, typically to say there's a ferry coming out. So the other channel, of course, which is still fairly new, is channel 65. But here's a picture of an electronic chart. So if you touch that screen on any point, a position and distance bearing comes up. So channel 65 is the dedicated channel for us. But if you actually wanted to call an NCI station, don't do it on channel 16 because it won't be answered. The Coast Guard will answer you and tell you off for not using channel 65. if you do call us on 65, hopefully you'll get a nice welcome. We have a mass of local information, whether it's about pubs or marinas. Most importantly, all of the Coastwatch stations. Odessa looks roughly like this. This little clipboard hanging on the side here is a quick-to-access copy of the inshore forecast for our region. If you call us, we can, if you ask us, repeat it to you. It's covered by copyright, so we can't repeat it. But we do, and more stations are, either sort of quarter past every 2 or 3 hours, or half past, depending on how you move between our stations. We will broadcast the actual conditions at our lookout, so that's wind and even tidal positions. Also on 65, several of you here tonight already asked me, do you do radio checks to help out the Coast Guard? Yes, of course we do. But more importantly, and I tried to spread the word, we can do an AIS check for you, so that if you're worried about whether you can be seen, you can call us up and give us your position and say, can you see me? And I think that's an opening that you may not have known about, but could be useful. When a shout is on, there's another interesting piece of kit. You can see it strapped to a block of wood there. Press of a button, if a shout is going on, everything that's said in the lookout is recorded. So here's someone actually doing one of our broadcasts, and it's very good as part of the training now. People are very shy when it comes to their first radio broadcasts. I remember my wife, who, when she did her radio exam, got caught in fog off Dungeness, and she had just got her certificate, and I told her, ring the Coast Guard and tell her where we are, but to keep an eye on us, because the shipping lane comes right into Dungeness, and the fog was so bad, I didn't want to leave the deck. You could barely see the mast. So it's another 20 miles to go to Dover. And it wasn't until she finished the conversation that I pointed out that she conducted it with the microphone to her ear the whole way. And I've seen several students do exactly the same. And I may even have done the same myself, but won't admit it. But it is very good for us, and I hope it's good for you as sailors to engage in a more relaxed conversation with the watchkeeper than you might have with the Coast Guard. So they said, if you know what we do and we can help, we're more than pleased to help you if we can. How am I doing? I'm not keeping you from dinner, am I? Again, just by sheer relationship, there is a north-south facing view of the chart version of where we sit at New Haven, and that is how it converts. And it's amazing the difference between an untrained person coming into the unit, into the lookout, as against somebody who has become trained, the way they take a view of that bay. And it's turned over the years with this approach. It's turned the NCI into a truly professional organisation with an excellent working relationship with the Coast Guard. So, when we were last here, I think Richard Hughes gave you a talk about 10 years ago. There were 226 incidents reported in which NCI were involved. I just picked up the 2023 statistics, and it's interesting to note that about half of them were instigated by us. Details of the incidents I've logged on the pieces of paper there with blue statistics. So you might actually find interesting the things that have caused the problems. We don't publish pictures, but these are some old ones of incidents that were close to our lookouts. These things happen, sadly. So, for the future, I mentioned that we are planning to open more stations, but the government is still very short of money in terms of what it would like to do with regard to sea and beach safety. There have been some dreadful incidents, haven't there, on the south coast during the storm. And it's always a good idea to have a spread of knowledge amongst the public, awareness available to you. We are stuck in our lookouts. I've told you we can't get out and make contact with the public. But after consultation with the Coast Guard, county councils, all sorts of other interesting groups, like lifeguards, RNLI of course, they haven't got the volunteers to go and, say, give a talk in the school. We have produced, together with them, a water safety manual, and it's being converted into a training manual. And there are some experimental days coming where, under the sort of general heading of Meet the People, to see what happens if we start communicating, and it's across 5 particular headings. Some of the headings are based on the type of craft or the type of activity you're doing, maybe walking on cliffs. To go back to the picture I showed you of Seaford Head, that's an unfenced cliff. When they do fence it after one of the regular cliff collapses, the locals come and take it away because it's a natural event. They don't want the natural appearance of the cliff to change. And as much as you try to make the cliff safe, they are immediately dismantled. So I think it's a much better approach to try and make people aware of the dangers of both sea activities on the water and being a yachtsman, just being aware of what's going on around you and how to react. So one of the brochures, I've got it coming up. This is one of the trial brochures. I say there are 5 of them. Perhaps you'll look out for them. This is very much hot off the press. It's very much in line with modern thinking. And if you have an opportunity to encourage people to get the knowledge, please do. So there's a summary of everything we get up to. And as I say, we are more than anything the eyes on the water. We're keeping an eye on you. I hope you don't mind. And we don't do anything about it unless we have to. They say visitors are always welcome. The best way of breaking into one of our lookouts, other than the one at Gosport, is always with a pack of chocolate digestive biscuits and guarantee you a cup of tea. Right. Has anyone got any questions?
I was wondering if you would be ecstatic or appalled if you were forcibly amalgamated with the lifeguards, and also should not they be publicly funded?
It's very difficult. The work that they do is again completely different to ours. We are eyes on the water, eyes on the cliff, with very specific operational actions in mind with the Coast Guard. I know we don't physically do it, and the Coast Guards have their teams that physically do it. But the Coast Guard would tell someone on the beach. We communicate with the beach people directly if we see something that may not be particularly life-threatening. But we can communicate directly with them on walkie-talkies if necessary. But the Coast Guard still has to be the main operational director. And again, if we were lifeguards, we would have to have more people in more places than we possibly got. We've got 60 stations. We cover practically all of the main incident areas, the important ones south of Scotland. And I think we would not be willing to be dragged into anything other than a really good working relationship. I'm not speaking for the chief executives, but work with them, of course, we will.
Yes, that's excellent talk. Just a question, your title's the National Coastwatch.
Yeah.
You missed out two of the nations of the UK. It's the hordes up north, Northern Ireland and Scotland. Are there any plans to expand?
There are other people who operate on a charitable or and on a professional basis, but I don't think all of them have got the sort of partner matching with the Coast Guard. A lot of them have got DFS status, declared facility status. And by the way, you have to be operational for 2 years before you can even be assessed for that status, in other words, to really get your training well honed up when you become operational. In Scotland, I think another gentleman was asking me earlier about it, who is a boat in the Hebrides. What protection does he have? I'm afraid I really don't know, but I do know there are lots of there are some groups.
In terms of your volunteers, what's the ratio in relation to individuals that come on with no experience at all in relation to navigation, anything kind of in the realm of the training that you're doing versus people that come on that have the base knowledge?
I think I told you, when I joined, I sailed to Holland the first time 55 years ago, so I can view myself as a fairly accomplished sailor. But it was much better for me to start the training with a completely blank sheet to pick up everything I should have. I had a head start on navigation, head start on weather, and probably a little bit of experience in terms of boat handling. But that doesn't actually make you a better or worse watchkeeper. It's best that anybody who comes to it has got really an interest in it. It's public service, which is very rewarding, and you will have to fulfill your test obligation ×3 on every category before you become a qualified watchkeeper and prove that you can handle a shout. So it's better not to say that you would all make good watchkeepers because you're good sailors.
Yeah, thanks very much. I guess a few of us in the room probably pass by the Gosport station on a fairly regular basis.
Yes.
It's obviously an incredibly busy harbour entrance
Yes.
there, or indeed patch of water. I'm just wondering how much vessel movement is logged by the station.
There are times when you cannot keep up with it, even at Newhaven, and sometimes at best you will just count the boats, but the object, the exercise when that sort of thing arises is to pick on the ones you think are vulnerable and try and get them recorded. There is also the push button operation that records, so you could give a running commentary and document it later. It's a sort of quick way of trying to maintain the forensic approach to that.
Are there times when there is only one person manning the station, or is it mostly twos? Or
if somebody doesn't turn up for a watch, then there is a procedure. We have people locally, there's normally 6 on a regular list, who can be called on, who can be there within 5 or 10 minutes. Under those circumstances, we just advise the Coast Guard that we're on a single person watch. If it's a busy day and the watchkeeper can't cope, he or she are instructed to close the watch and let the Coast Guard know that they're not operational. I can't recollect that ever happening at Newhaven. We've always been able to put up, except I think in a COVID period when we were forced to close, I don't think there's any reason for 365 days a year when we haven't been open all of our due opening hours. But yes, it is possible for a single watchkeeper to man it on a quiet day.
sort of related question is, what's the sort of average staff numbers needed to permanently man the station?
Well, New Haven is quite a good example. We run, as I say, the 4-hour watches during the summer. Because we have just the 2 people on watch, it takes about 70 people to run the roster for the whole year. Places like Calshot probably have as many as 5 watchkeepers on because of the exceptional amount of traffic running through the station. And similarly, if you've got a remote working with a telescope and a modem, you might need somebody to specifically monitor that. That again brings in health and safety problems because there are rules relating to being stuck in front of the screen for too long, aren't there? But we're probably a typical station, two people on watch, about 70 people.
Steve?
Yeah, what are the sort of legal liabilities that you've got or responsibilities? I mean, are you sort of a bit oppressed by that? But
I don't think so, no, because we report facts, and I don't think, provided you take a sort of fairly forensic view and don't dream things up, something that might cause an incident.
because I was more thinking if you missed something.
I can't see that being a problem.
Yeah.
If there is a very big sea and somebody's gone overboard, we would be expected to see it. And we have had a pure and simple, one dreadful accident where 2 fishermen, the drink had something to do with this, had a fouled prop when they were at anchor. One of them went straight over the side to see if he could undo it. The current's only running at about 1 knot across Seaford Bay, but it took him away. His friend, instead of getting the anchor up, and again without a life jacket, went in after him. He was saved, but his friend wasn't. And that was just good fortune that one of our watchkeepers saw it. But a life was still lost. So you can't, I don't think, express that sort of action in legal responsibility terms. We can't care for everybody. If we did, we'd all be wearing life jackets and we wouldn't be going out with a beer can in your hand.
Peter, one thing that, this organisation is dependent on people subscribing. How much is the annual membership charge?
There is not a specific charge. We invite people to make a regular donation. There's people from all walks of life. There is a social aspect to it. A lot of people do it for the company. So we think it's wrong, and we have funds available to help with uniform and things like that. Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
I've got one more slide to show you.
Right.
We have a Facebook page on which we post photographs. I thought you'd like to see the picture of the most viewed photograph. You're a very sad lot, that's a very valuable fridge. Notice everything is individually wrapped to be fully VAT compliant. I gather a lot of you have been to Hoos in Holland.
Yeah.
That's me arriving there 55 years ago.
Wow.
And the ablutions in Edam have been preserved.
Well, thank you. We're very, very grateful to you, Peter. It's a fantastic organisation. And I guess the best accolade that you have is that your patron is now Her Royal Highness the Princess Anne.
Yes.
And she took that position up about 5 years ago?
Oh no, so as a patron, yes, but she was involved with
this.
I know.
And it's invaluable for you to have gone through all this, and thank you for the brochures that you've left with us, because I'm sure that we can all benefit from this. And as you've said, there's no substitute for eyes. And in this electronic age, it's so easy for people not to have the advantage of being able to talk about what they can actually see.
The princess nicknamed our approach is using the Mark 1 eyeball.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much indeed. It's time for everybody to recharge their glasses, and dinner will be in about 10 minutes' time.